Look at this place. Swinging by UPS to pick up a parcel, and it's like a spring day out here today. Wow. There is some snow coming today. Can't see the 401, usually can. You've often seen what it looks like off of our balcony. A little different today than yesterday. Yikes. Well, Downsview, it's quite a day out there. Just yesterday I saw, as I put that little video clip, the birds were singing and the grass was there and the sunshine was out, and I felt like I was walking around on a spring morning. And today, as I just go to make this video here at the church, I look outside and I think, man, I just drove in less than an hour ago, and there wasn't a drop of snow anywhere. Now it's a blurry or blizzard out there. And you know, one of the challenges, of course, in a town like ours, and even in wintertime, is that things can change pretty quickly. The weather can change pretty quickly. The traffic can change awfully quickly. Obviously, the situations that we're dealing with COVID and all things related to that, there's changes every day or so. When you hear the news reports, I think some schools went back just yesterday, and some other schools are closed, and some emergency orders were extended yesterday until the 12th of February. And I kind of thought, well, I thought it was till the end of February. It was 30 days each time, but apparently there is a difference between lockdown and emergency orders and stay-at-home orders and stay-at-home recommendations, and all of the challenges within those kind of things. Boy, there's just a lot to take in. And one of the things that we don't like as people generally, and maybe even sometimes Christians, is the constant alteration to our lives that we are struggling against in this past year. But I think in most of our lives, there's aspects of, you know, we like things to be the same because we like things the way they are, and we don't want them to change. And the fact is that in a world where things are always going to be moving around, we have to have a sense that we need different counsel and different advice at different times in unique situations. And that's what brings us to the book of Proverbs today in chapter 26. We're coming to the end of our trek through this in the month of January, and perhaps you're like me, the more we walk through a chapter a day, 2 or 3 verses will kind of jump out. Either they're familiar to you, or you think, oh wait, that hits me, or that makes sense, I can see where that would be useful. And yet today, the whole idea that we need different advice in different situations just is going to stick right out to us. Let me read the first few verses, and I'll stop at the verse, and you'll see what I mean by that. Let me begin at verse 1. Like snow in the summer, and like rain in the harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. Now he says snow in the summer. How silly would that be? Well, it felt like it was summertime in the wintertime yesterday. That life doesn't always go and appear the way that you're expecting it, he says. But in verse 2, like a sparrow in its flighting, like a sparrow in its flying, so a curse without cause does not alight. A whip is for the horse, a bridle is for the donkey, and a rod is for the back of fools. So verse 4 says, do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you'll be like him. Verse 5 says, answer a fool as his folly deserves, that he may not be wise in his own eyes. And you notice there in particular that the counsel here is about people who are foolish in their behavior. Now, a fool in the scriptures is not generally someone who is ignorant or stupid. Not someone who doesn't have knowledge or doesn't have the capacity to use knowledge, but someone who knows better than they're doing. He's capable of and able to do better than they're doing, but they don't. So when Jesus will say, don't say to your brother, don't call your brother a fool, and don't call your brother raka. Raka literally means empty-headed. And it sounds to me like Jesus is saying, look, somebody has no brains. At least they have no expectation. We should have no expectation that they have the capacity to use the knowledge that they're getting properly, versus a fool who has the capacity but doesn't utilize it. Boy, we have a tremendous responsibility, don't we, to make use of the capacity for the use of knowledge that God gifts us with. We have a tremendous responsibility to use the capacity to process knowledge, that capacity which God has given us as a gift. And yet, when it comes to foolish behavior, sometimes we need to respond this way, and sometimes we need to respond that way. Sometimes it's going to seem like the stark difference between what looked like springtime yesterday and a blizzard today. I mean, can you imagine, can you remember, and imagine back to where you were, maybe you do recall, but imagine what it was like, or remember what it was like, basically a year ago this week. It was the first time that we got wind and publicly named this new novel corona, Wuhan, COVID, something, even SARS it was called, virus that's now here in Canada. And the gentleman went to the hospital where my son works at Sunnybrook. Our son doesn't work in that area, but it was in the hospital. Pam and I had just come back from our respite in Florida and coming back through the airport, and there was this massive lineup going through customs. And you know, it's always, an airport's a busy place, but I thought, boy, like this line is just not moving. Like what is going on? And there was this weird question on the screening questions. It's all self-screening when you come back through customs down in the airport. And the last question was, have you been or been around anyone who's been in Wuhan, China? Now I say Wuhan, China, I didn't even know how to pronounce it then. And I literally said to Pam, it's a trick question. Because you go, no, 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 or yes, 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 yes. And I said, they throw in one of these silly questions in here to see if we're giving authentic answers. Because I thought, Wuhan, like what kind of a question is that? Is that even a real place? We had no idea of what was about to happen over the next calendar year. And we've needed different kinds of counsel and advice, haven't we? And it just seems like what an amazingly stark difference that it's supposed to be a time that we get together at our church. It's supposed to be a time that we get together for people's birthdays or weddings, whether it's Easter or Christmas or Thanksgiving, whether it's a tragedy because someone has passed and we have a time of memorial with them, or someone is ill and we have a time to go visit them in the hospital, or we get a chance to see them as they recuperate in their homes. All these things that we can't do. And we need different kinds of advice. And doesn't the Proverbs come to that today? When he says, look, on one sense, and it's the use of knowledge that he's going for, right? Do not answer a fool according to his folly. And folly, just another way to say, do not answer a fool according to his foolishness, or you'll be just like him. He says, listen, you get yourself sucked in to some ridiculous anti-mask, anti-authoritarian government conversation, that it doesn't work and the science doesn't show it, and you think to yourself, you're not talking about science, you're talking about not wanting to do something, or talking about what you do want to do, and you're just looking for an excuse, and you just think, I'm not going to enter into that conversation, because you can just tell, look, that's not even the conversation that we're having, is it? Let's have the conversation you want to have. So instead of saying, I don't think masks work, say, I don't want to wear a mask. I am sick of it. Instead of saying, I don't think it matters if people gather, I don't think the virus is spread like that, simply say, I am sick of not seeing my friends and I'm dying to get together. You might die because of getting together, but to get together is this is what I want to do. Let's not answer someone according to some foolish hypothesis that they bring us, which is not what we want to talk about. Let's actually go to the point of being real with one another and let's just have this conversation. Or, this is the thing. Now in verse 5 it says, answer a fool as his folly or as his foolishness deserves, that he may not be wise in his own eyes. Sometimes you're going to enter into a conversation with someone and just look, the way you're operating in your married life will not do. That's just not going to work. You're not going to find the joy. Your spouse is not going to feel cherished. Your children are not going to be well cared for. Your example is not going to be something that anyone wants to emulate. Look, there's a kind of correction that's required to answer a fool in light of the foolishness that they're talking about or living in the midst of. Now, if you're anything like me, this is not easy to figure out. Am I supposed to answer the person in light of the foolish thing they're saying? Or am I supposed to ignore the foolish thing they're saying? I don't want to be like them, so I don't want to be sucked into it. And yet, when verse 5 says that he may not be wise in his own eyes, I don't want to encourage someone or even passively encourage them by not saying something. They need a word from me. I'm not always sure which it is. Isn't that why we've been studying through the book of Proverbs about the issue of wisdom, not just law or rules or regulations. Wisdom, by its very nature, requires a discernment from us to know, okay, what's the right thing to say in this circumstance? Is it even right to say anything? Is it right to enter into the conversation? Is it right to pull myself into the circumstance that the person wants to bring me into? Is there a need for some correction here? Or is there a need to say, look, I'm just not even going to go there with you? That's not easy to figure out, is it? And again, brothers and sisters, it's probably going to be a while until we get to meet in this beautiful worship center again. It's probably going to be a while before we're going to meet without masks, and when we will be able to sing without our masks on, when we'll be able to actually shake hands and hug one another, to have one of our soup Sundays again, maybe to have the jubilant singers up there on the stage again, to have us outside in a barbecue playing some volleyball and the kids running around, and I mean, all the things that we love doing here at Downsview. I pray and encourage you to pray that God would bring us back to these times, that He'd remove this virus from our land, that the vaccinations would actually be helpful, that all the details that are required to make that happen, that God would just sovereignly make that happen. And in the meantime, that we would wisely guard ourselves from entering into foolish conversations, folly-filled discussions that are just not about the things that we're pretending they're about. Guard my heart. Guard your heart. Ask God to guard my heart. Ask God to guard your heart. That we'd be people of integrity and we would deal with reality, and that God would graciously move us to live, whether it's a springtime listening to the birds, whether it's a snowstorm flurry, whatever the situation that the Lord has been pleased to bring us into, that He would use us and that we would find our joy knowing that we're being used by Him and seeking to honor Him with the lives and with the wisdom that He's given us for this life. All right, friends. See you soon. Cheers.